You think families during the hardest economic times survived on nothing but scraps and desperation, but the truth is far more powerful. When money disappeared across America, stretching from the dry plains to crowded city neighborhoods, people didn't just endure, they adapted. Kitchens became places of invention, where ordinary ingredients were transformed into meals that carried families through uncertainty. These dishes were not born from luxury or choice, but from necessity, resilience, and the determination to keep loved ones fed. What came out of that era was not just food, but a legacy of creativity that still shapes how people eat today. Fried potatoes stood at the center of countless meals, simple yet deeply satisfying. Thin slices dropped into hot fat would sizzle and crisp, filling the air with a rich aroma that signaled comfort. With nothing more than salt, maybe a bit of onion, they became a full meal rather than a side. Families stretched a single pan to feed many, sometimes adding water and covering it to soften and expand the portion. What we now treat as a breakfast extra was once a lifeline, proof that something so basic could still feel complete. Macaroni and cheese existed long before it came in a box, and in its earlier form it carried a sense of warmth and effort. Layers of pasta and cheese baked together with a simple milk mixture created something hearty and filling. It showed up wherever people gathered, offering a sense of normalcy when everything else felt uncertain. Later, the boxed version made it even more accessible, turning it into one of the most recognizable comfort foods in history. But its roots lie in those earlier kitchens where it meant survival as much as satisfaction. Even what people would now consider waste became valuable. Potato peel soup turned scraps into nourishment, proving that nothing had to be thrown away. Peels, vegetable ends, and leftover bits simmered into a broth that was humble but sustaining. It carried a quiet dignity, showing that resourcefulness could turn the overlooked into something meaningful. Sharing such food with neighbors wasn't seen as charity, but as solidarity. Then there was water pie, a dessert that sounds impossible, yet existed out of sheer determination. With no eggs or milk, people created something sweet using only the simplest ingredients. The result was surprisingly comforting, a reminder that even in the worst moments, families still made room for small joys. Serving dessert, no matter how simple, sent a message that hope had not disappeared. Biscuits with gravy offered a different kind of comfort, heavy and filling enough to sustain long hours of labor. The biscuits rose soft and warm, while the gravy, made from drippings and flour, coated them in a rich, savory layer. It was food built to last, meant to fuel bodies through demanding days. Its simplicity never diminished its importance. As time moved forward, other inexpensive staples found their place in kitchens. Noodles and broth became a quick, adaptable meal that could be upgraded with whatever was available. A single egg, a handful of vegetables, or a bit of seasoning could transform it into something that felt complete. It became a symbol of making do while still creating something comforting. Beans carried their own kind of significance. Slowly cooked, they filled homes with a smell that promised warmth and nourishment. Paired with bread, they became more than just food. They became a sign that a household was being cared for. Their simplicity masked their importance, providing both nutrition and a sense of stability. Some combinations became timeless, like melted cheese between slices of bread paired with a warm bowl of tomato soup. The contrast of textures and flavors created something that felt far greater than the sum of its parts. It became the meal people turned to in moments of need, whether emotional or physical. In many homes, a pot of soup never truly stopped cooking. Ingredients were added as they became available, creating something that grew richer over time. This ongoing meal reflected not just resourcefulness, but community, as neighbors sometimes contributed what they could. It was a shared effort, a collective response to hardship. Cornbread and beans told a similar story, especially in rural regions where resources were limited but traditions were strong. The cornbread came out crisp and golden, while the beans provided depth and substance. Together, they formed a meal that was both practical and deeply rooted in culture. There were also meals built entirely on cooperation, where people combined small contributions into something larger. What started as almost nothing became a pot full of nourishment, showing that even in difficult times, people could come together to create something meaningful. Rice and beans emerged as one of the most complete and universal meals. Different communities prepared it in their own ways, adding spices and techniques that reflected their backgrounds. Despite the variations, the result was always filling and balanced, proving that simplicity could still be powerful. Lentil soup carried history within it, connecting generations through a shared understanding of how to make the most of humble ingredients. Slowly cooked with whatever vegetables were available, it became thick and satisfying, offering both nourishment and familiarity. Egg-based meals also played a role in stretching limited resources. Mixed with simple ingredients and spread between slices of bread, they became quick, reliable meals that could feed multiple people. Their versatility made them a constant presence in everyday life. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches stood out for their convenience and accessibility. They required no cooking, lasted well, and provided energy when it was needed most. Their simplicity made them universal, cutting across economic lines. Pasta with tomato-based sauce offered another example of how affordable ingredients could come together into something deeply satisfying. Slowly simmered, the sauce developed richness and depth, turning a basic dish into a comforting staple. Hot dogs became an accessible source of protein, used in creative ways beyond just being placed in a bun. Fried, sliced, or added to other dishes, they demonstrated how even the simplest items could be adapted. Fried rice showed how leftovers could be transformed into something entirely new. With the right technique, day-old rice and small additions became a dish full of flavor and texture, minimizing waste while maximizing satisfaction. Casseroles brought everything together into one dish, combining affordable ingredients into meals that could feed entire families. Topped with something crunchy, they offered both comfort and practicality. Baked potatoes stood as a complete meal on their own. Cooked until soft and filled with whatever was available, they required little effort but delivered warmth and sustenance. Stews represented patience and transformation, turning tough ingredients into tender, flavorful meals. Slowly cooked, they became rich and satisfying, proving that time could be as important as ingredients. Simple mixed dishes filled with whatever was on hand became common, combining vegetables, meat, and pantry staples into something filling. These meals were unpredictable, but always served their purpose. Meatloaf showed how small amounts of meat could be extended to feed many, mixed with fillers and baked into something that felt substantial. It became a staple that balanced necessity with comfort. Through all of these meals runs a single thread, the ability to create something meaningful out of very little. These dishes were never about impressing anyone. They were about survival, care, and the quiet determination to keep going. What stands out most is not the ingredients or the techniques, but the mindset behind them. People refused to give up even when resources were scarce. They found ways to bring warmth to the table, to create moments of normalcy, and to remind each other that they would endure. The next time a meal seems too simple to matter, it's worth remembering where many of these dishes came from. They were built in times when simplicity was not a choice, but a necessity. And yet, they continue to resonate, proving that good food is not defined by cost or complexity, but by the purpose it serves and the people it brings together.